What's going on, people? It's me again. To be honest with you, I've been thinking about it now for a while. I've been doing some videos lately, and I give you guys a little bit of my background, but I think I can do better and explaining, giving you a little bit more of my background, because the main reason why is I'm not looking for recognition, fame. I haven't even put out my name yet. I mean my actual real name, So far, I don't think again that is really important. But if names are something, yeah, okay. You can call me Ed. Everywhere I go, I introduce myself as Ed. Obviously, I have a accent. I'm pretty sure you guys notice it in my videos. I have an accent. The reason why is obvious. I'm Hispanic. I was born and raised in the island of Puerto Rico. I'm from Puerto Rico. Most of you probably know, but some people don't. Puerto Rico is a United States territory. We've been in this relationship, if for the lack of a better word, for over 100 years now. It started after the Spanish-American War, and where obviously the United States won that war, and it wasn't only Puerto Rico. It was Puerto Rico, the Philippines, Cuba. We were all in this package, if you want to call it, where Spain was like, hey, okay, that's it, part of the deal, peace. You can have all these territories, We were basically like, oh, there you go, you can have these people. We don't want them, we don't need them, At least that's the feeling, United States, obviously, at the time decide to, grant liberties and certain conditions to all these countries. The Philippines went to eventually became their own country. Same thing with Cuba. That part I'm like a little bit, I will have to find out exactly, the years. I know it wasn't that long. United States was like, okay, you guys, but for some reason, United States saw value. I'm pretty sure it was some type of like a military or a strategic value, to the island due to the geography. And when you look at the map and you see where Puerto Rico is located, especially at the time when it was mainly these big ships, like Navy ships, that would travel around and whatnot. So having some type of a relationship with the island of Puerto Rico was probably convenient. Like I say, if it's not only for military strategic reasons, So United States decide to keep this kind of relationship with Puerto Rico, and we became basically a territory. We stood as territory for years, and a few years later, 1917, United States decide to grant U.S. citizenship to every Puerto Rican born. From that point on, 1917, every Puerto Rican by birth was a U.S. citizen. At the time, some people, the people that were, alive at the time, saw it as okay, oh great. Other people were like, oh, I don't care, whatever. It wasn't a big deal for them. So through the years, Puerto Rico, it's been in this political situation or condition, where we are, a territory. We have certain rights, but we don't have all the rights. One of those rights is voting, voting for the president of the United States. And I believe it's the same. It's not only us, I think it's pretty much the same for American Samoa. That's my understanding. I have a shout out to all my Samoan friends. We every time that we get together, we have this thing going on. Obviously, it's an islander thing, I guess. I don't know. Anyways. So we're the same, the only way for you to vote for the president of the United States is if you decide to relocate to the main island, how we call it, right? To the main continental U.S. If you can afford it, if you can afford to pull something like that, In my case, as a U.S. citizen as a citizen of the United States, for me was through service. And it became later in life for me. I didn't went straight after high school into service. Life happened. Right after high school, a few years after high school, I got married and have kids. I started my family at a young age, and decide to stay in the island, still working some jobs here and there, factory mainly in the island. But and I as a kid I was always attracted to the service, to the military service, through family. I have uncles that served during the Vietnam War, and that's another subject. It's very close to me. Vietnam. It's because of that. My uncles. I grew up and learned about their service and respecting their service. But again, like I say, life happened for me, so I didn't join right away after high school. So it came years later, especially after 9/11. 9/11 happened, and just a little bit after that, in 2004. In 2004, Afghanistan was going on already for a couple of years, and Iraq was basically starting, back in 2003. So we were in the high of the Iraq War, starting Iraq War. So I decided to join. At the time I was 30 years old, relatively older for the typical recruit. We typically join at 18, 19. So anyways, I served 10 years in the military, U.S. Army, active duty. That whole thing right there was a whole life-changing experience. The simple fact of joining the military. Joined the army. That was the first time for me jumping into a plane, because before that, like I say, if you can afford it, yeah, you can travel with easy, no problem. From Puerto Rico to the main continental U.S. No, not even a passport required. At least at that time, I'm not quite sure what are the current requirements, to travel back and forth. So if you're planning a trip to Puerto Rico, Google it first. I don't know if it's still the same way. But at the time, no. I mean, everybody could fly back and forth from United States to Puerto Rico, and without even a passport, because it was a U.S. territory. It was just like traveling to Hawaii, you know. So, but again, I couldn't afford it, so that's why, at that point, that was my first time jumping into a plane, and at 30 years of age, finally, making it into the States. In my case, Fort Sill, Oklahoma. That was my first experience in the United States. Basic training for the United States Army. That was my welcome to America. Go. Get in there, get in line, that was a big culture shock, and to a certain extent, I mean, yes, Puerto Rico again is a U.S. territory. We're pretty familiar with the American culture because, I mean, it's pretty, there's similarities, especially when since a young age at school, English is mandatory. That's the first thing. English is mandatory at school, from kindergarten all the way, to 12th grade, and that's our introduction, obviously, and with the advance on technology and TV, obviously, people, cable, people, are we are very familiar with the culture, not only that, but also we hold, I mean, the typical Puerto Rican family, it's Catholic, but again, it's Christianity, in general, it's basically like 90. I don't know. I've been away from the island for so long. I don't know exactly what are the numbers right now, but yeah, I mean, it's like 90, 99, 95%, all Christian people, from any denomination, Catholic, Protestants, like Baptists, all that good stuff, So we all hold the same Judeo-Christian values, so it's that part is not really difficult, It's pretty much the same. It's the language is the big one, like I say, because in theory every Puerto Rican should be bilingual. Like I already stated, English is mandatory at school, but it's just like any other language in the States. It's in the school system. You have some choices. You can take French or German, Italian, but how many people in the States can claim that I'm fluent in this language because of school? Because no, I mean, you keep a little bit, and you can understand certain words and whatnot, but in order to become fluent in that language, that's not enough. You have to immerse yourself in that language, that whatever the language is. So that was the case for me. In basic training, and I went over there, and that was, like I say, culture shock. At the beginning, honestly, I was kind of lost in translation. I couldn't understand because one, it was the language, English, and two, the drill sergeants were like screaming and yelling at us, and in your face, they were barking orders, basically like, yeah, you guys move over here, So that itself, it's a culture shock, even for someone born and raised in the States, fluent in English, that's still a culture shock, So as you can imagine, in my case, was kind of like a double, the shock, and the frustration, and not being able to understand at the beginning, but I made it okay. Obviously, I survived. I graduate basic training and AIT, the school, the school that you attend for your job, the job that you pick in the military. I survived that. After a few weeks, everything was starting to like click. With the language part at least. It was like, oh, okay, I'm kind of understanding a little bit more. But that right there, that's when I would say everything started for me. The starting to communicate better with my peers, my fellow soldiers, and we start mingling, and I start learning, more about each, because I mean that's one of the beauties of United States. It's so huge, you know, continent, that I mean, it's a country that, part of the continent, the American continent, um, that you have people from all walks of life, all different places, people with different backgrounds, different accents, that's another one, for me. Back in the island, when I was listening to movies or whatever, for me, in a movie, I can hear someone from the south talking and someone from the north, and for me, it was kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like the same. I wasn't able to catch accents and stuff like that. I start learning and catching more, as I went through this process, of learning. So it was pretty cool. It was amazing, That was a great uh, life lessons and experience, for me. I grew as a man, as a human, learning, sharing experiences with fellow soldiers, and I learning about the different. Hey, this is how we talk in this place. Oh, over here in the north we call it this way. In the south they call it this way. So that for me always is been amazing, So I love that, and I have no. Yeah, like I say, it was, then after that, obviously, I eventually made it to my first duty station, and eventually deploy, and I was gone constantly, Iraq, Afghanistan, overseas, uh, multiple times. But hey, guess what? That's um, there's no regrets, no regrets. Yes, it was painful because I was away from my family, my wife, my kids. But again, I was, the way that I see it, that was part of my service, my the way to pay back to the great nation of the United States. Because one thing that my mother taught me was to be grateful, and work your ass off. That's what her example. She died, years and years before. So. But that was one thing that I always carry with me from my mother. Work your ass off, be grateful, and be respectful. To your elders, and treat people the way that you would like to be treated. Years later, I learned that was the golden rule. It was called the golden rule. But yeah, once again, like I say, I'm grateful and to this nation, because the United States, it's been a place that opened. Uh, they received me and my family with open arms. They took care of my family while I was gone. The army, the United States Army, United States Army always is gonna be home for me. Uh, and yeah, that's it. No regrets. I'm gonna try to continue adding a little bit more, every time, so you guys can know me again. And if it looks like I'm kind of like ranting or like all over the place here, it's every now and then it's not that. It's just that I'm still learning how to do all these things. I don't have any way of. I don't have a script or anything. I'm just talking, top of my head and from the heart. But yeah, like I say, I just want to give you a little bit more background about me. Okay, so until the next time.